So 100 years ago, in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, Unitarians sat in a sanctuary just like we are doing today. And these people knew rough times. World War I was over, but the trauma of the political turmoil still lived on. Families had been broken up, loved ones lost, businesses had been ruined, money and resources were scarce. So we can relate in some ways. The specifics of our troubles are different, of course, but we nonetheless carry much with us from the last few years that is difficult, challenging. 100 years ago, but those Unitarian people in that congregation are really our siblings, not just in the faith tradition that they share with us, but in their experience. They knew pain. We know pain. They knew struggle. We knew struggle. They knew uncertainty. We know uncertainty. But as we've proven this morning, no matter how difficult a period human beings live through, there is still joy available. We felt that this morning as we've celebrated our graduates and students. We felt that joy listening to music, the joy from being together, from acknowledging the importance we hold in one another's lives. As we've already heard this morning, Norbert Chopik was the minister of that congregation, and he came up with the idea of the flower communion, first celebrated amazingly on this exact date, June 4th, 1923. 100 years ago to the day. People sat in a sanctuary and looked just like we're looking right now at these beautiful flowers that everyone had brought to share with one another. Each flower came from someone different, different color, different story, different perspective on life. And so beautiful when they are displayed together. And then the flowers go off with someone, and that beauty is spread out into the world. Beauty calls us together. Beauty of life, beauty of community, and then beauty is shared with one another, with a world desperately in need of beauty. So as we know, this flower ceremony, this communion or ritual caught on, and this little new Unitarian church, Norbert Chopik's church, dedicated to justice and reason, a church that grew to have thousands of members. This church would span the decades leading up to the Second World War, to the rise of Nazism, to the Nazi occupation of Prague. In Norbert Chopik's congregation, even with Nazi officers stationed at the door, and at this point, remember, there's thousands of people in this congregation, truth was spoken from that pulpit. It was spoken in metaphor, spoken in code, but the congregation understood. Truth about the importance of justice, of loving our neighbors, of fighting against authoritarianism. And finally, as the resistance and the flowers ceremony continued on, Chopik was arrested, sent to Dachau concentration camp, where he was eventually put to death in the gas chamber. Now, 7 years ago, maybe when I got to this congregation, I might have told that story and said, can we believe that speaking of love and justice could be so dangerous? Can we believe that our Unitarian ideals would be so threatening that this horrific thing could happen? But now my message is different. While we gather in beauty today, and we do, the message is that life, our democratic values, freedom, are beautiful and fragile like these flowers. They can be destroyed by those who are determined to crush them. We hold the beauty of the ideals that are too often taken for granted. We hold them with care this morning. We need only to look at the events of this past year, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, not even a year ago, the rhetoric surrounding trans children and adults, the continued embrace of authoritarian presidential candidates. We only have to look at that to know that Norbert Chopik's time is not so different from our time. And the lesson for us is that we will continue to do the work of our congregational mission. Work I invite our children to participate in as well, because you kids matter in a significant way too. You're the ones who are going to make a difference in the world of tomorrow. You'll carry on the message of this flower communion to the next generation, just as the eldest in this sanctuary have carried this message so that we are able to share it today. 100 years, and this flower communion is still a powerful testament to what is good, what fills us with hope, what is powerful and beautiful in people coming together with ideals that embrace inclusivity and justice. So in just a moment, as the music plays, you'll be invited to come forward and take a flower, one that somebody else has brought, a gift to you that represents who they are, the love they carry. And I want you to take that flower with great joy, because this is a joyous thing, and we have got to grab a joy wherever we can find it. For some of you, this is your 50th flower communion. For some, it is your first. But for all of us, this today is 100 years, 1 century since that first flower communion, since that group of tired, anxious people gathered, tired and anxious but determined. They gathered in community and committed themselves to the principles that we still live with today. Those people didn't know what was ahead for them and their community any more than we know what the future holds. But they persevered. They found beauty where they could. They found it in one another. And I want to say one last thing about Norbert Chopik before we actually do the flower communion. In Dachau, in that bleak section of the camp that was reserved for clergy, he still wrote songs, preached, invited the other prisoners to sing along with him. He told stories, he led worship services, and he even led a flower communion. But all the prisoners had access to was sticks or rocks, some weeds. And so they brought those things to the makeshift altar anyway. And they found beauty in it. They found beauty in their togetherness. And it wasn't just a mirage, because it lives on. I'm telling you the story right now. The story lived on beyond that moment. Beauty is found in the choice we make to love the visual of a flower, but more importantly, to love the person who has brought it. To love the ideal of sharing our strength and resources to love the principles that draw us together.